Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. For those of you new here, my name is Donna, and for those of you not new, well, hey, hi, welcome back. Glad to see you here. Thank you guys so much for coming to my video today. I am super excited to bring you my thoughts and feelings and experiences with my palette today. As you guys know, this palette roulette series is really about reviewing my old palettes, so that if you're in the market for something that looks like this palette or is this palette, many of which I have are not limited edition items. A lot of what I have you are able to still pick up. There are some are the exception to the rule, right? But I think that I'm doing you a service out here, telling you all about these palettes that are still out there on the market for you to purchase if you want them, and giving you some eye looks that you can create with them, maybe swaying your decision a little bit either way dependent on what you're in the market for. But that is what we're here for today, just a little tiny palette review. Most of my palettes are a little bit on the higher end, not necessarily all luxury. There are some like luxury palettes and or drugstore palettes really sprinkled in here, but a lot of what I do here on this channel is high-end makeup. With that said, I think that this palette, today's palette, falls a little bit maybe into the luxury mindset just because of the sheer price point of it, as well as like the brand, right? And when I think of this brand, I think of like makeup artists, and even though they are very consumer based right now, like they were delivering to makeup artists when they first came out into the industry. So with that said, let's talk about this palette right here. This is the Viseart Soleil palette. This is an 8-pan eyeshadow palette. It does retail for $30. It has 0.28 ounces in it, or 0.035 ounces per pan. And I'll show you those pans in just one second. This does come in at 3.9 stars on Beauty Bay with just about 7 reviews. Not a lot. We do have 4.2 stars on the Sephora website. There are a smidge bit more reviews there for 46 reviews. And then on Google, the Google platform, there is 4.3 stars for this palette, and there are just over 1,100 reviews for this palette. I would say 4.3 stars is probably fair, honestly. I would give it that 4.2, 4.3, not because it's a bad palette, but because it's just not a standalone palette. Like, I think that it's an amazing palette, but like even this look today, I had to dig in to some of my single shadows to pull out those oranges and those browns to get this look. And you do see that I went with gold all over my lid, right? Right? You see that? I'm not a gold fan. Gold does look very good on my eyes, though. I'm just not sure why I just don't wear it very often. I am wearing lashes again today, you guys. I'm just not sure about these lashes. Like this one, I feel like it looks like it's about ready to fall off. Is that the case? Can you see? Am I seeing things? God knows. I'm not wearing my glasses, so maybe I am seeing things. We just don't know. This is what the palette looks like. It is just a little tiny, like hand-sized palette. I do love the packaging of it. I do think that this little pull tab here is super neat. I do love this packaging a whole lot better than their full-size packaging, which looks like this. You guys have seen me review these on my channel before. So their full-size packaging is just really chintzy, really cheap, really plastic. These are definitely a step up, right? This is cardboard, and it's got this cute little tab on it, and you open it up, and it does have a mirror, which I think is also pretty exciting since these guys don't have mirrors. It does have a mirror, and then it also has this little cover. I have kept it with the palette for as long as I've had this palette because it's just super convenient. It helps protect those shadows just a little bit. But I will tell you, I have traveled with this, and even if this does like get jarred open, like there's still a lot that needs to happen for those shadows to be impacted by, you know, maybe jostling around or the palette opening. There still is like a whole flip that needs to happen before those shadows are impacted. But so I do think that this is an amazing travel size palette. What I would say is it's an amazing travel size companion palette, not like an all-in-one palette. You do open it up. As I said, you do have a mirror, which I think is a really convenient mirror. It fits your whole eye area into it. And then these are the shades in this palette. Again, there are just these 8 shades. These pan sizes are 0.035 ounces of product. I don't think that that is necessarily a horrible size shadow, honestly. Most full-size shadow pans are 0.05 ounces, so this is just a smidge bit smaller than a regular size shadow pan. It just looks tiny, I think, because it's square and it's in this little tiny like compact palette, but really there's no wasted space here, and I have to appreciate that, because you know I've talked about the wasted space in palettes before. There just isn't any wasted space in this palette. I do love also that these pans pop out. You guys can see there on the top, they do have these little divots here. You can get your tool down in there and pop them out and put them into a bigger magnetic pan. So you don't actually have to keep them in this little tiny palette either. 8 shades in here. There are mattes, shimmers, and 1 duochrome, which is this guy here. This is just a mini eyeshadow palette inspired by the Mediterranean, warm days, lazy days, easy living kind of thought process. This is cruelty-free, it is gluten-free, and it was launched in March of 2019. I do think I picked this up almost immediately after it launched. It was in my color story. I picked it up at the same time I picked up the Alyssa Edwards palette from ABH, so that might tell you roughly it came out the same time. There are 3 mattes in here, which are this purple, this beige, and this yellow here. There are 4 shimmers, which are these 2 here and these 2 here, and then the 1 duochrome, which is this one here. This is going to be best over primer. I would say even a white base primer with a tacky finish to it, so not necessarily a cream base that mattifies your lids for sure. I think that if you think that you need to, you could set like the crease area, but don't set the lid or anywhere that you're going to put one of these shimmers. It does work better over a tacky base. And because of the color story of it, I would say it also works better over a white base. With that said, I did see quite a bit of fading after approximately the 8-hour mark with these shadows. So I would say it's like wear time is somewhere around that 8-hour mark before you're going to noticeably see some kind of fading with the shadows. The shimmers do work best wet or on top of that tacky base. I do have the gold in my eye look today wet. It is this gold here. I have used them dry. They're just not as vibrant and as pigmented in my opinion. I also see quite a bit of fading earlier if I'm not using them wet. These are not all built the same as far as the shade in the pan equates to what it is on your eye. I would say this purple right here is the biggest factor in this statement. Like, it does not show up this purple on the eye. But I will say this is probably one of the easiest purples to work with, and building it up was really super simple, as well as blending it out. Super simple. I didn't see any patchiness with these shadows. I saw little to no fallout with these shadows. They are super firmly packed in here, so there's not a whole lot of kickback that you're going to get in the pan, which also kind of translates to how much fallout you're going to see on your eye. I think the only fallout I experienced with these shadows was with the shimmer formulas, and specifically this one it does seem to be a little more loosely pressed in there.
This lash is poking me. Why can't I figure it out?
The watermelon and lavender shades, so this shade here and this shade here, did stain. This one I had quite a pretty significant pink stain on my eye after using. This one also stained, just not as significantly as the purple one did. And Pastis, the yellow here, is a little bit more sheer. It is one that you will want to pack on. It is in my inner corner today, and it does show up quite vividly on my inner corner. I did put down a little bit of extra, like, of my creamy eye primer onto there first, and then packed it on top of it. So it is packed onto a tacky base to get this shade, which is why I said in the beginning that you're going to want to use a tacky base, especially with the shimmers here, but also if you really want vibrant pigmentation for some of the shadows in here. These all blended together quite nicely. Even the shimmers blended quite nicely. I would say that the one I struggled with the most as far as blendability was this one, and I really do think that it's just because it has a little bit looser base to it, maybe even a little bit more glitter to it than some of the other shadows in here. I would also say that the pigmentation in this palette really isn't true to brand. And when I say that, I mean, like, you guys saw my review of this, and if not, I will stick it up in the cards for you to see, but always my playlist is linked down in my description box. I have had such great feedback for Viseart about the pigmentation of their shadows. The pigmentation is pretty spot on. It's amazing. I didn't really see that a lot with the mattes in this palette, and their mattes are my favorite. Their shimmers are not my favorite, so I kind of expected to walk into this with shimmers that really didn't impress, but the mattes really should have impressed as far as my knowledge of my experience with Viseart shadows. It just wasn't there. Like I said, the yellow really popped on so sheer that I had to build it up. And as a matter of fact, when I said I put, you know, my tacky primer in here so that I could build up that matte shadow into my inner corner, like, it was like I made sure it was nice and dry and tacky before I put any shadow on top of it, to the extent that I think this eye is a little bit pissed off at me, to be honest. And then this one, it sheared out. It was purple, but it wasn't purple. It was more like a violet shade. And the funny thing is its shade name is lavender. It's definitely not a lavender in the pan, but it does kind of transpose onto your eye into a darker lavender tone. So I guess if I were looking at the shade names, I should have known better, but that is what I expect. From Viseart, this is what I expect for the color that is in the pan to translate onto my eye. It didn't give me that. And then this shade here I expected to be a little bit more beige, and it kind of comes off a little bit more pink. So when I say that it's not true to brand, it's because these shadows, when I put these shadows on my eye, I know that this blue here is going to be the exact shade of blue that it is in the pan. That's just how it is. It translates from pan to eye the exact same way. This didn't do that. Now, when I think about it through the lens of the shimmers, I do think these shimmers are a lot better than the shimmers that I've experienced with Viseart in the past. I do also have this palette here, which is the Sultry Muse, and this is all shimmers. And I will put this video in the cards as well. It's just not a spectacular shimmer formula. Like, I have never really gotten along with Viseart shimmers. This palette actually looks like I've never touched it because I just don't like these shimmers. These are amazing. These are really great shimmers. Like, look at the gold on my eyes. Like, all of them are really great. I even loved the duochrome. And it's a good thing because there are 5 of them in this palette. Well, including the duochrome, there are 5 shimmer shadows in this palette. This is definitely a companion palette. This is definitely not a palette that is a one and done palette. I mean, yes, you do have, you know, the really nice brow bone shade that is also super great in your inner corner. And if you're anything like me, popping this yellow into your inner corner is also pretty great. But I do think that these shades scream lid shades. They don't scream like crease shades. Yes, you can get a cohesive eye look out of this. I did get several cohesive eye looks out of this. This is utilizing some single shadows. There was another look that I did that was also one of my favorites that was also utilizing some single shadows, but I did use this palette on its own to create a couple eye looks, and I really liked them. But I would say that unless you want like a crazy in your face kind of eye look every single day, this is not your one and done palette. There's also not a deepening up shade. The darkest shade in this palette is that purple, and like I said earlier, it doesn't translate to this purple on your eye, so it is going to be kind of a really lighter tone of purple. As a matter of fact, I used it in an eye look that I did utilizing some of my single shadows, and I used it in the outer V, and you can't even tell it's there. I used 3 shades out of this palette on that eye look, so I'm quantifying it as an eye look that I created with this palette. But you can't even tell the purple is there for the most part. I had to really dig into that shadow. That's the other thing I would say about that purple. It's so firmly pressed that it's super hard to pick up on your brush unless you're using a really stiff brush. Let's go ahead and dig in and go through the swatches. There are only 8 shades in here, so I can't imagine this is going to take as long as it has in the past, but I'm going to do that first row first. And I don't know why I just put that on my thumb. I never swatch shades on my thumb. So the first one is this. This is Pastille. Pastille is the light peachy beige matte. This does look a little bit more beige than it comes across on the eye. However, in this swatch, it also looks very beige. You can see that this is pretty much a really perfect color for brow bone, inner corner. It really brightens up the space. The next shade is this, which is Taffy. This is a shimmer peachy pink. It is a really pretty shade. It's the one that I said I think is a little more loosely pressed in the pan, because I did have a smidge bit of fallout with it. I think it's just got a lot more of a glitter base to it. And then the next one is that one, which is Watermelon. This is a shimmer medium red. Like I said, this one does kind of leave a stain on your eye. And then the next one in that top row, the final one in that top row, is that one, which is Pastis, which is a matte yellow. But I think that you can see just at the beginning how healthy yellow it is, and then at the bottom how it kind of just fades out at the bottom. It's just not a super strong yellow all the way through, and as you blend it, it does quite sheer out. All right, so second row, you have this one here, which is your duochrome, and that shade's name is Bonbon. It is a duochrome blue purple, perfect for a halo eye. And the next shadow is this one, and it is the purple called Lavender. You guys can see it does look quite patchy in the swatch. I'm telling you, it doesn't get patchy on an eye look. But let me swatch that again. So that is Lavender. You can see it's definitely not this purple. That's definitely not what it looks like on my hand. And then we have Marmalade, which is a really pretty like terracotta shimmer. I actually quite love that shade. As a matter of fact, I was going to put it on my eye look today, but then I was like, no, let's do gold, because I consistently complain about golds. And then the gold tone there, which is Soleil. This is the yellow gold shimmer. This is the namesake of the palette, and this is actually a really beautiful gold tone. So those are the shades in the palette. I think that you can see that this is not a standalone palette. This is definitely a palette that would have to be a companion piece for many people in their collection. The packaging is perfection for travel. Travel is an important aspect of my job when it's not a pandemic. So I don't buy specifically for travel, but I do specifically note palettes in my collection that are great for travel purposes, because then I know what to bring with me when I'm on the road for my job. I love that it has removable magnetic pans. I will say that they're all really super buttery soft to touch except for that purple. And I do know that purples are pretty stereotypically really hard to formulate. I'm not saying they did a horrible job. This is a great purple. It's just not this color on the eye, and it is a lot more grippy in the pan than the rest of the shades are. It does feel a little sandpaper-like, and that might be like a pressed pigment kind of thing that's going on with it. There's not really any super dark mattes for deepening up an eye look. You do have a lightening one to brighten up any eye look or to blend out any one of the shades that are on there. I would say too that this red is a shimmer, but it functions really, really well also as a matte. It's not like sparkly shimmer, so you can definitely use it in your crease. I am a rule breaker. Like, I am number one in my 40s and wear shimmer all over, doesn't matter. And number two, wear crazy colors, and not supposed to do that when you're an old lady. I wore it in actually one of the eye looks that you saw that is yellow on top and then red, and then I've got, I believe, it's either the gold or both these two shades on my lid, and then like a red liner. That look, that red is this red here. So it functions very well in a crease, just like any other matte would. I just wanted to make note of that because I know that some people would look at like a little 8-pan palette and go, oh my God, 5 of those shades are shimmer shades, and totally ward it off. But I think that the matte shades that are in here, as well as that red that can function very well as a matte, do very well together to formulate eye looks. It's not a safe palette though. We'll say that it's super colorful and a lot of people will turn their nose at it just because of the colors in it. But it is a wonderful palette. It's a beautiful palette. I will continue to keep it in my collection. I do love Viseart shadows. They are, the formulation of the mattes are typically, I would put these in top 5 for mattes. I wouldn't for shimmers, but I was impressed that the shimmers in this formula or in this palette were a lot better than I have seen Viseart shimmers in the past. Would I repurchase this palette? You know, here's the true tea. When I purchased this palette, I purchased it at the same time as the Alyssa Edwards palette, and I think truly if I had thought it through prior to purchasing it, this $30 8-shade palette has the same colors, the same tones, the same everything in it that $45 14-pan palette had in it, and I maybe should have paused on this. I'm not sure that I would purchase this again, but what I will say is if you're in the market for just 8 really fun pops of color for your lid, for your crease, for your inner corner, this is a great palette to own. And $30 isn't bad. Yes, I would purchase it again if I didn't have these color schemes, but at the same time, I bought a 14-pan palette for just $15 more that had those same colors in it at the same time that I bought this one, so I needed to think it through a little bit more. With that said, let's go ahead and pick the next palette. You all who are familiar with my channel know that I use a decision wheel from the Play Store. I do have a Samsung Note 9, so I am on the Android operating system, but they do have these kind of things in the iOS as well. It is just like a Wheel of Fortune type app. It does have all of my palettes in it. I did put them all in when I first started this 120 episodes ago, and we have slowly but surely knocked them down. I have kind of a palette obsession, so I do have quite a few palettes, and I continue to bring them into my collection. So as we get them in, I do put them into this wheel. As we utilize them through Palette Roulette, I declutter them, I give them as gifts, I throw them away, whatever the case is, I do take them out. So with that being said, I am going to spin the wheel, and to do that I just press the little tool button in the middle and it gives us a new palette to utilize. So I'm going to do that now and we will have a new palette. I got the Morphe x Jeffree Star palette. So this is actually kind of funny because I purchased this palette. I've used it once. I don't support either one of these brands. I never have, not really, I shouldn't say never. I've never supported Jeffree Star except for one time when I bought a mystery box, and I've pretty much written off Morphe because my friend Angie, she ain't my friend. I wish she was my friend, but Angelica Nyquist said it best the other day in her video. She said not even Morphe wants to be Morphe. I mean, that's a true story. So there's that. I'm going to go grab that palette. I'll be right back. Alright guys, this is the new palette for this coming week. This is the Morphe x Jeffree Star palette. It's definitely more aesthetically pleasing than many Morphe palettes out there. This is what the palette looks like. It's also very square. Many Morphe palettes are not square. This is what the palette looks like. You can see I haven't really used this palette. I have used it one time. I used this shade here, and this shade here, and this shade here. The rest of them are up for grabs. I haven't used any of them. So even though this is not a new palette in my collection, this is kind of a new palette because I haven't used it before. I would also say that you remember that blurb I was speaking when I first got on here about, you know, the occasional affordable palette sprinkled into the mix. This would be one of those affordable palettes. So
there's a fly. I'm gonna kill it.
Have you used this palette before? I would love to hear your thoughts down there. I would also love to hear your thoughts on the Viseart palette that I just reviewed. If you have different experiences with that palette, please hook us up. Let us know. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I do hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope that if you did, you're considering giving it a big thumbs up. It really does help our channels out here. I also hope that you liked it, or me, enough that you're considering subscribing before you go. If you do that, please don't forget to hit the notification bell. It will notify you every single time I upload any content, and I do upload multiple times a week. I hope that 2021 is treating you all kindly. I hope that you are cruising through it. Crazy can't believe it's March, just like me, but cruising through it, that you're safe, that you're sound, that you're keeping you and yours healthy, and still wearing your mask when you're out there in public, at least for a smidge bit longer until we're through this and everybody's vaccinated, because I want you to be safe and healthy. Keep yourself safe for no other reason. With that being said, please continue to love each other, but love each other from afar. And until next time, bye everyone.